Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and today I thought I'd do another train build, but instead of doing another wagon, I thought I'd do a train building on this stretch of track here. So as many of you will be relieved to see, Atswat has been rebuilt after its horrendous train related accident of the last train video we did. I've just done it in exactly the same way for now, for speed. But for today's video, I did want to build, as I say, a train building. And I've always kept this stretch of track available to do that. Now, in due course, I am going to do a cargo yard, but I thought that this sort of long, thin expanse of track would be a suitable spot for a train shed. Now, a train shed is kind of like a garage where you kind of perform maintenance on a train, and they aren't usually on a main line like this, so I will probably get complaints from train experts that it's in the wrong place and should be on a siding. But I don't have any sidings, and I don't really want to spend a lot of space having a siding that's long enough to take one of my trains. So I'm going to kind of cheat a bit and have my train shed on the main line, kind of acting like a big tunnel, sort of building-based tunnel, for trains to charge through on their loop, as you're seeing them going around now. And I just think it will be another interesting feature, whilst also being a really quite tall building, kind of, I don't know, about 16 brick height or something like that, as tall as, say, this monorail line is here anyway, on this otherwise featureless expanse. So that's what I'm going to do, and the set that I'm going to be basing it on is the really fantastic old set of train shed 10027. The train engine shed 10027 was released in 2003 and is a really iconic set, but not one that you see a lot just because it was quite rare, even though it only went for £50 in the UK or $70 in the US. It just seems there aren't many of them about, and as a result it's very hard to get hold of for a good price, and it's very hard to replicate as well, just by getting the right pieces, because it uses a lot of very rare or unique pieces. So basically what I've decided to do today is to build an approximation of it that uses a lot of the features of the original build that are very iconic, like the fact that it's very big, very tall, very red and sort of very traditional, old looking, but then make some changes along the way that fall into a few categories, really, I suppose. Some of them are sort of just improvements that I've decided to make just to make it look either a little better or just function a little better for me. Some changes are actually very much required on account of the fact that it was all designed originally, that set, to accommodate old trains of that era, and they were just a little bit smaller. So essentially I'm going to have to make the whole building a little bit bigger to accommodate new trains, and specifically my passenger trains, which have all got double-decker dome cars, or the pantographs, of course, on top of the engine cars and so on. So we need to make changes for that. And then, of course, the other change is to avoid those really expensive parts wherever possible, just to save on money, because I mean some of them have got to ridiculous levels, as we'll see as we go through. Now, if you aren't familiar with that set, one of its most distinctive features is the fact that it's kind of made of two halves, and the two halves are kind of hinged together, kind of like a book. So you can have it like an open book or like a closed book. And when it's in open book format, the two base plates on which the set rests are in a line, and you've kind of got a three-sided building with the two ends with the great big doors on, and then one full wall and an open side, so you can get your human hands in there for playing around with the scenes. And that's kind of the format that I'm going to be doing. But you can also then, just with a closing of the book, so to speak, have both engine shed doors up at one end and both of the sides closed, and having an open end on the much shorter side. Now obviously that means it's only half the length, and I think in somebody else's city perhaps that would be absolutely great to do right up against a wall, so you just sort of saw the three sides of a building, so it was like a really deep facade, and I think that would look really excellent. I'd like to do that in my city indeed, but I just don't have anywhere appropriate. And as I said upstairs in the Lego room, the only way I'm going to fit this in at all is by having it lengthways like this. And the only way I can, well, the only place I can put it is on that stretch of track. And it'll have to go over the passenger track as well, because there just isn't room next to the harbour wall over the cargo train. Phew. Now, I suggest today that I build these two halves one at a time. The original set was actually hinged at that sort of turning point of the book that we mentioned earlier. But I think that's a bit of a hindrance actually, because it means the whole thing's very hard to move around and a bit too kind of inflexible, if you will. So what I've decided to do as my first change is actually to use Technic bricks and pins, kind of like we do on modular buildings, of course, to enable us to join the two halves together that way or that way instead of using hinges. And I think that's a bit of a better technique, really. And the second change I've made is that I'm using solely the new colours of Lego, or the recent ones, including here I'm using dark bluish grey for this first layer here. And this set was actually released around the time they were changing the colours over, actually, in that I believe that this set was released with the old dark grey, which is kind of a really horrid grey if you ask me, and other ones in the same set, in the same line, with dark bluish grey. So it's a bit of a mishmash anyway, but I'll be using the newer colours just because they're easier to come by. And then the second change I've made, I kind of alluded to earlier, in that I have to increase the height of this entire building by one brick. If I don't do that, then basically the pantographs will all, well, smash off essentially. They will not make it through this thing because it's just too shallow underneath the arch of the doors. So I'm going to have to actually raise the sort of lower section of the building all up an extra brick. And that's why I'm going to have a 3 tall red brick layer at this sort of intermediate level rather than the 2 red bricks that would have been in the original. And as a result, I can actually get away from one of the more difficult bricks to find, which was a 5 brick tall set of windows on the ground floor. So I can use the much more recent and common 6 tall windows. So that's what I'll be doing here. And another change that I've made is that I'm using white because the original set used light grey. In fact, it was old light grey, which is even worse. So that's harder to come by on their 5 tall door and their 5 tall window. So going for white, I think, kind of lifts the colour a bit, makes it all a bit brighter, and also enables us to, well, use these easier to find parts, of course. So there is our 3 tall red strip. And the interesting bit of this part of the build is this is where we start to see all of the tools hanging up for the workmen who will be working on the trains in this building. And they're all wearing this rather fantastic get-up, kind of an American style, I think, with these lovely work overalls with the blue stripe on and these sort of red neckerchiefs and the kind of obligatory beard, I suppose, as well. So those are the guys that are working here. And I've got kind of a workbench here, just like the original set, with an oil can, mug, and coffee machine. Keep them all going. And we can put that, I don't know, say about there. And a bin or trash can there. So that looks rather good. And then on to the next level. Now here I have replicated the 5 tall windows. You can see that with a brick under it is the same height as the ones on the ground floor. And that's because of the design of the building kind of requires it to be 5 tall. I could have perhaps redesigned it yet further, made it even taller, but then it really was starting to look a bit too tall. So I was able to get 4 of these, 2 for each half, in the 5 tall window. So yeah, I'm going to use them. And then the second part of it all moves to the arches, which I think is one of the most important features, giving it this lovely shape. You can kind of see all the glimpses of train through, and I really like that, in this really bright red colour, and all of the texture bricks are continuing on all of these columns throughout, so I think it looks really fantastic. Now there is no glass in there, but I don't think that's too bad because I think these buildings would be relatively open air to get some flow through to get rid of the fumes. And I've continued white here as well as on these frames, of course, just to make those parts easy to find and to brighten up the building, because I think that looks a lot brighter than it all being different shades of grey. And then we move on to one of the most difficult parts to find in this set, and that is these massive doors. Now, they've been in quite a few sets, these doors. Well, I say quite a few, a handful really, part number 2400. But they're all very popular sets, and I think that's where the problem is. So this set's got them, there's a couple of castles, and there's even that Fire Brigade modular, 10197, that has these, and that's probably why they're the most expensive, because people are trying to build that from original parts, and they're actually on the back of that set. So they're not even that noticeable, perhaps, but nonetheless. So I've got a pair of these for each end as well, and they were probably the hardest bit to find, actually. And it's kind of weird when you first see it. Here's the other side, with these doors being kind of perched so high up in the air, but that's actually so a minifigure can walk under them or duck under them, getting in and out, whilst actually just not allowing a train to go in and out. Though I imagine a train has the power to bash right through those. And they'll be permanently open in my setup because, as I said earlier, my trains are going to be flying through this because this is going to be actually over the main line of my city. Yes, it's not realistic, but to all those train buffs who say, you need to put it on the siding, it wouldn't be realistic, I say my trains aren't realistic already, partially because they've got some wacky carriages and so on, but also because the passenger wagons have the capacity of 4 whole people. All of the cars in my city have 1 seat in them. Lego is not realistic, it's for fun, so I think that's absolutely fine. Right, so now I need to build the next layer on top and think about what's going along this edge. Now, I think the thing I like most about this set, the original, is that they've actually done a lot of work on the interior with loads and loads of details that make it pretty much like one of my builds, really, packed and stacked full of detail. And this building is open-sided, so you can kind of look at it and admire it all. And I will be using that open-sided feature in my city. Now, I will talk about that a bit more later as to whether that's where I want to end up, but I think it's definitely worth trying because I think part of the benefit of having a building like this is being able to kind of see inside it and see all of that wonderful detail. And this is case in point, this wonderful kind of overhead light, and that's just illuminating the workbench below. And we'll have to tuck that in quite a bit actually so it doesn't get whacked by a passing train, because obviously we've got to remember with all of this that the train track is going to be going through the middle of this base plate or its equivalent when we move it in the Lego room, so we can't have anything interfering with it at all because those high-speed trains all fly into it and, well, either derail or take it with them. But another one of the wonderful side builds is this lathe. And anyone who's got some familiarity with big tools like this, and lathes in particular, will know that this is very anatomically correct, actually. Kind of got the cutting tool on the piece that is being worked on there that can turn. And this is the apparatus that can move up and down, so we can make the different cuts where appropriate, powered by the wheels. So it's all very accurate. I like that a great deal indeed. So I'll temporarily put that in the track space. Another example is this drill in green, and they're all very color coded. It's quite fun. We've got a crane later in yellow, we've got that in red, we've got a vice in blue, so it's all quite bold as well, and that's kind of my style as well. Anyway, this is kind of an overhead drill, and you've even got the modified plate there with the hole in for the hole to take the sort of drill piece when it goes all the way through something. So I think just that little touch there is wonderful. And incidentally, that modified plate is one of the really hard to find parts in this set. It's not one of the crazy expensive ones, but it is about £1 for that one modified plate, which is quite a surprise, I must say, but it's only actually been in this set, plus a kind of what looked like promotional set, 4679, which was called Free 500 Lego Bricks. That's why I'm assuming it was kind of promotional. Not very common anyway. So there's another tool. Yeah, so I kind of gave in when I saw one available by coincidence. It was on my wanted list and I thought, yeah, go on then. It's a complete waste of £1, but there you go. And I haven't done a similar thing with this, which is the cutting tool setup. You've got kind of a welder's helmet there in a kind of old grey and black visor combo, and that can hang on there. Now I did manage to get the green hose with the green string on the back, but this really should be in the original set mounted on a yellow dolly. Or handcart, some people call them, don't they? The yellow handcart, though, was only available in this set, and that's what makes it so expensive and difficult to get. So that's piece 2495, and the cheapest one that I can see available in the whole EU is £11 just for a yellow handcart. So yeah, I didn't push the boat out for that. That's just a step too far for me. Right, so those are 3 of the bits of kit. Here is another one. This is the kind of stanchion that's holding up the roof on the open side. It's got all sorts of features built into it. First of all, it's got a nice overhead light. I've changed the setup of this and I've used a slightly different column and slightly different brick structure and all the rest. But the other bit you'll see is this crane. So essentially it goes here with more Technic bricks so we can accommodate the other half when we want to join them together. Forget that. And then I've got this winder here which powers this crane that's mounted high up, so they can pull out really heavy items from trains and so on, and work on them on the bench or something like that. So I really like that, and I really like the fact that it's the bright yellow bit of the red, green, yellow, and we'll see blue later kind of massive tools. And I've actually mounted this a lot higher than it is in the original set. I think it might be on this brick layer or this brick layer, and that's just because that hook will totally hook onto a pantograph and probably take this whole column and maybe some other parts of the building along with any train that whizzes along underneath, and we don't want that. And this can swing all the way to this side, oops, or all the way over to the far side as well. So that is a really good setup. I really like that, and it's just another wonderful play feature. Cool. Right, so then we just need a pillar in the middle as well. Then we can kind of put these tools in place. So I'll put, just like in the original set, the lathe there, and I'll put the drill there. Then this is probably going to get in the way all day because it's loose, and I'll just sort of put it there. Then we can accommodate the roof. And if the doors were closed, you'd want a great big arch like this. And I've made more changes here as well, in that all of these elements of the light fittings are in white now, because some bits were in grey. So I'm keeping that sort of colour scheme going, because I think that makes it look a lot brighter and nicer. And another bit that was grey that is now white are these sort of very shallow fence pieces. They're kind of those ones. And they just add a little bit of grating and texture, which is really nice. But again, I've gone for white. And then for the back part of the building, we've got those full lattice fence pieces, and they are in white as well. So you can see how tall this building is. I mean, it's not as tall as a modular or anything like that, but it's really quite impressive for a building that's just going to accommodate a train. Yeah. So you can already see it's shaping up pretty well, and you can see why it's such a desirable and attractive set. And I really like the fact that they've used Technic beams here, or bricks rather, just to give it a more industrial look. That's another area, incidentally, that I've changed. I've kind of inset this Technic brick, for example, by 1, just so it kind of matches the 2 sides. I think it looks a lot better, and it's slightly sort of in from the edge of the roof. And then as for the roof, let's wind up a little bit there, so I can add on these wonderful roof pieces. Now they're a combination of all sorts of bits here. We've got the, let's move this to one side. We've got the 6x8 slopes that I've used in all sorts of things, including that Stranger Things advert that I did very recently. My kind of favourite glass roof slopes that I've used kind of in a very similar setup actually on the top of my GBC factory. And I've just tidied it up from the original build with these tiles on the very top of everything as well, because the original kind of had it all exposed like that. And I don't think that looks half as good. So I've got one for this section and one for this section. And another change from the original is that these were actually able to be lifted off, and so you could sort of get inside. But I didn't really see the point of that because, well, you can already get inside via the side that is totally open. So I haven't done that. And I think it actually gives the structure a lot more strength for when a train smashes right into it. Anyway, there we go. Looking good. So now we've got this wonderful kind of overhang here, which I really like the look of. And it's all looking rather smart. So I suggest that I get on with the second one, which has got quite a few subtle differences. And then we can kind of join the two together and see how it looks in both formations. So here we are with the other end, which I've started already just to get over some of the bits that are exactly the same. Of course, with this being the mirrored version of the end we've done before, with the train door at the right rather than the left. We've continued with the new Technic pins, the fact that it's packed and stacked with loads of tools on every flat surface and so on, and then the 6 tool windows and then the 5 tool windows above that are a bit harder to find. And it might be at this stage you're saying, well, with all these hard to find pieces, Robin, why did you not just buy the whole set in one go from eBay or something like that, second hand? And the answer is quite simple. It's just price. I mean, you can do that. They are available. But the very cheapest one you will find is about £300. That's the cheapest in the EU, and they go all the way up to about £600 if you want the box and things like that. So yeah, I was really just trying to save a lot of money by buying these bits over a very long period of time, and then sort of grimacing when I had to buy things like these expensive doors. So there we are. Here's the second side started, as I say. And the main variation on this side is the fact that we've got this great big opening here. And this further adds to the realism, if you ask me, because it's to accommodate a great big black sliding door. Now, the one that came in this set is actually called, very interestingly, the Black Sliding Door Type 2, and that's part 2874. And that's actually unique to this set in black, and as a result, it is ridiculously expensive. They're £20 each, and I mean for each half of the door, so you'd need £40 just on this black door, which is just crazy. And you probably have to go to more than one vendor, so there's 2 postage charges, all the rest of that stuff. So I went for the interestingly named Black Sliding Door Type 1, which is the more familiar one perhaps. And actually I prefer it because they kind of clip together. And they've got these quite prominent handles, and I think they look a bit better. So these are often found on train carriages and things like that. Now they're actually unique to one set as well, which is the 7045 Hovercraft Hideout. And actually that makes them quite hard already, but each of those sets only has one of these as well, so that makes it even harder. But those sets weren't as popular as this one, so they're actually a bit cheaper, and they're only about £3 each. So much better than £20 each. And I've actually got that Hovercraft Hideout set. That's the one with, what's it say on it? Pier 13, I think it says on it, or something like that. That's one of the ones in my harbour with the crooks in it. Anyway, that fixes like that. And what I really need to do is get one of the 1x2 pieces to kind of lock those 2 doors in place so the whole thing doesn't slide around. I'll try and remember to do that later. But I really like that, as I say, because it just adds a bit of variation to this quite long building when the 2 halves are together. And it represents, obviously, you having to take in or out a very large part or section of train, or maybe you have to replace a whole bogie or something like that. I don't know. But it's definitely a very interesting feature. So it's quite important to have something here in a sliding door format. So really happy with that. The other main difference is we kind of have a raised workstation on this whole side, and that looks like this, again with the Technic pins built into it, and that's just, I guess, so train engineers can kind of work on, well, access a train for a start, but also work on things that are a little higher up as well. So it's just a little platform with steps at this end, and there is the blue bit of bigger kit to go with the yellow crane, the red lathe, and the green drill. And I think that's a really good and interesting build as well. You can see it looks like a vice, and you put something in between them and turn this handle to close or open the jaws to hold onto it very firmly. So I really like that. Got another one of those lovely angled lights for lighting the whole work area. Mug, that's obligatory. Now the original had an octane can in, so I need to put one in, and I've got one with a sticker on. That's from a few different sets with the sticker on, but I think that adds an important detail. And I've got a couple more of these guys with the wonderful work overalls on. And this head, I just thought, yeah, he definitely works on trains, doesn't he, with those huge sideburns. And I've given him a more modern welding torch and mask because I kind of figured that, well, that might look better. So I'm going to add that to the scene. See if I can put that down as well. There we go. Then another one has got a toolbox as well, just for the smaller tools. I thought that'd be good, and it's in red as well. So I could have him maybe bending over for his tea. And then I've got another bin, just full of tools. Maybe we'll put that on the far side. And the original had these ladder pieces, and they were kind of mounted on the side of this in order to kind of allow you to get from ground level onto this raised level. And we do have the steps on the end, but they will interfere with the train track. Original train track would have been mounted straight onto this base plate, but I've got it raised with ballast by one plate, and then I've got tiles on top of that, so it's just not going to work. So rather than make this non-flat, I'm just going to take these off. I don't think they're fundamental to the set, but I did buy them. Oh, I must secure that. So I put those to one side, and then we can put on the roof, which I won't go through again. I've just left it as this one great big piece just because it's the same as the other one. But it does have some, whoop, it is quite fragile, and it does have some really interesting features like these smaller arches in red as well. So I just think this is just such an iconic set. I really wanted it, as I'm sure many of you do, and this just is a slightly more cost-effective way of getting it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's cheap. It's a big building, and big buildings cost a lot because Lego costs a lot, but also because you still need quite a few of the rare pieces. So let's see if I can manage to get this back in like that. And again, I've made that change along this edge just to make it a bit more consistent with the back half. I think that looks really good. So there we are. There's it with the door closed and the second half, that wonderful sliding door, the double arch. And if we bring in its buddy with the wonderful roofs with the overhang, and there's those arches from the other side, we can join the two together with that Technic pin. Will it go in? No. The door fell out. That's brilliant. That should almost be an outtake, but I'm going to have to keep going. Yeah, that isn't quite right, is it? Not pushed down enough. Let's see if I can get these Technic pins in. There we go. Second time lucky. There we go. There is our really long building. So this is what we're going to be seeing in the Lego room, this long format. And wow, it is long, isn't it? Especially with these lights sticking out on both ends. And this is the view that we're going to be seeing from the Lego room door, because one of the main rules of my city is that I don't mind open back buildings, but from the main viewing angle, which I class as the door into the Lego room, you can't see into any open backs. So this will be the view that will be presented from the doorway into the Lego room, which does mean that from the Lego standing hole, let me see if I can turn this around. It's a bit long, as you can see. That this will be the view that is visible from the standing hole. Obviously, the train track will be going through the middle. Now, I know a lot of you will not like that because you can see into a building. We will have the kind of monorail line kind of about here and going up in height about here. So you'll have to see what you think when it's in place and let me know in the comments. Because what I could do is take this to the second level and actually make it have a full wall on this side, kind of shift in all of these workings a little bit and have it so it looks like the side we just looked at. I'm not going to turn it around again. But basically on both sides. So that might work really well. Who knows? Yeah, so I think probably the best thing is for me to get it in position in the Lego room and let you see it there. Now I did say that I was going to show you in both formats, so I better do that before we actually go up. I'd forgotten. So here it is joined, he says, trying to join it. That was a bit easier at the front. Oh, and the back. There we go. There it is joined in the other format. So I can open the doors like that. Now I think this would look really good as a facade against the wall, and this is kind of how it would look if it were really boxed in on all sides, I suppose. You'd have to imagine that it's only one roof section high, but you'd have the wall on one side, the roof, and then the wall on the other side. So yeah, I think it would look good boxed in. The thing that I would probably change if I did box it in would be to have the roof removable, because I have firmly attached this now because we had that side access and that side view. But if I really did box it in, I think I would need to make that, reverse that change effectively and have removable roofs. Otherwise we'd lose all of those wonderful tools and details. So obviously all of this separated massively when I tried to take it off its base, but not to worry. The first stage that I'm doing in the Lego room is just trying to work out where this front corner can be, because in one respect I want to get the building as far kind of that way as possible, just so it doesn't completely block the view of this and the cranes from the city. But the nose of our very pointy train, 60051, which is more pointy than the other train that will be on this track, 60197, is going to stop it going too far that way. So if we just sort of bring this round in a motion, that's how close it is going to get. Very close indeed. But if I push this corner any further that way, then it will actually hit, because these trains do tip out a very small amount also when they go round a corner at high speed. And I really don't want it clipping, because then I'll have to move the entire building just a few studs down. So I think that means if that corner's there, that the back corner will be about here, with the open side on this side and the closed side viewable from the door to the Lego room over there. Yes. Oh, that was fiddly, putting that in position, the first half. And I have remembered to put in that little 1x2 so I can fix those doors in place so they aren't sliding around anymore. And you can see what I mean about it being open from this side. It's kind of open to the children's play park and the monorail line for our tram system. And in some regards, that's really good. So we can see inside and see the workmen and those wonderful pillars and these lights and all the details. So I do quite like it. But on the other hand, I know a lot of you won't. So you'll have to give me your view on that. I will show the main viewing angle when I've got the other half in as well. But for now, I think we better test that the white train can go all the way through without smashing into anything. Yep, I didn't hear any connections that were unwanted. Well, we should go down to a slightly lower angle. See if that looks any better from there. And that's kind of why I thought it might be good to have this train shed open, because if we have it completely closed, then it will be kind of like a tunnel, and it will be completely invisible, all of our trains going through, whereas at the moment we can actually see them when they're inside it. I suppose that depends on your personal preference. Let's get an end-on shot as well. Ooh. I really should be doing this when I've got the other half on as well. But the pantographs are very close, and so are the dome cars. So, yeah. Right, let's get the other half on and see it all in final position. Right, it's in. All in. And there you can see the train whizzing all the way through it. So I think one thing we can all agree on is that from this angle at least, the main viewing angle of the Lego room, where you can't see the insides or open back of any building whatsoever, that it looks fantastic. It's a much needed piece of height in between the sort of lower down harbour area with its cranes and so on, and the main city. And some of the monorail tram line is hidden behind it, with the stop just visible there, and I think that looks really good. And the train buzzing through it, when you can glimpse it through all of those windows, I think is really good, even if it's kind of unrealistic, as we discussed earlier. So that is a very nice view, and a nice bit of colour as well with all that red. But let's have a look as well at the more controversial open side. Yeah, I am still very torn, I must say. On one hand, I do like the fact that we can see the roof and so on, and the doors and all that, and the inside of the building, especially when the train comes through. I think that's kind of a really interesting view, with the crane and all the large machines that are used to work on them visible against that sort of white train buzzing through. I mean, that's a great view, isn't it? But on the other hand, it is the only building that we can see into the back of. I mean, those three are open-backed. These ones all along here are open-backed, but you really can't tell. In fact, all the Diagon Alley ones are as well. So, yeah, what do you think? I need your opinion on this one, I think, definitely. Do we want to have that view visible from what is arguably a much more utilised angle, really? I mean, I'm always in this standing hole taking pictures, whereas the main viewing angle near the door might be the first thing you see when you come in, but it's a much less used videoing spot anyway. Wow, I do love that really long multi-level roof, and the fact it kind of overhangs on all of the ends and even the intermediate bits, and I think adding those tiles onto the sort of central strip really makes it look very tidy indeed. Oh, and that's a good view as well, isn't it, from the top? Let's try and get that when the train comes round again. See it coming through all of these glass windows. Oh yeah. So I mean, that would still be available if we closed in that last side, of course, and would still be able to see it through all of those arches and windows as well, but clearly I'm going to need a lot more pieces. So give me your votes. Do tell me what you think in the comments. I am genuinely interested. Oh, and incidentally, I hadn't really planned for the monorail tram to be so close to this, but it does actually fit. So that's a good bonus. But I hadn't actually considered it too heavily when I was making the changes and deciding on its position. So I'm glad that's worked out. Yeah, a good building, but one question unanswered. So that is the final train shed, the final view, unless we go for a round 2 and close it in. So as always, thank you very much for watching, it is appreciated. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, it will be Wednesday, so we'll be doing our weekly haul. And then on Friday, we'll be back to the fairground, where I've actually got another ride planned. Yeah, I'm kind of fed up of doing structural work for a little bit, so I thought I'd do a really fun and funny ride. So I look forward to doing that with you on Friday. See you then!